Great. Okay, so last time we were able to get our uh, tank to actually move around the playfield. I'm driving around right now, and hopefully the refresh through our Rube Goldberg of various screen sharing and video streaming software will actually have this come through. Dom, at least on your side, can you see the tank moving around?
I'm seeing it, so I think we're
Rough
good.
figure
Yeah.
eight. And what if I start to shoot?
I see
Is
bullets.
that all right? That is fantastic. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is basically as much as we've got going on right now. The thing can turn in its orientation. It can move forward. I don't think backwards does anything right now. It can also shoot things, and those things are actually live entities in the simulation. And at some point, we want to make them do something. So we're thinking for the agenda for today. There's a couple different directions we can go. One is that if we can shoot bullets, maybe we want the bullets to hit things, right?
Mhm.
That's one thing we can do. The other thing that we could think about is we have this really, really nice kind of tile grid for our playfield, and we could start to vary it up and actually at least change it visually. Maybe we can do some like really primitive like tile editing or something like that, so we can actually have an interesting, compelling map. And if we are really ambitious, we could even make the different types of tiles mean something in terms of gameplay. So it could mean that you can't pass through something like a body of water or some mountains or walls or whatever, or it could mean that it slows the tank down or something like that. What are you feeling the appetite for right now, Dom?
I was gonna propose a combo, which is let's define like an entity like a wall object, and then have the map editor be so we can place walls. And then we can do some rough collision. We can build a box or a maze, or think about is the wall destructible like Bolo, because I don't want it to be pure terrain. I think it's still an entity.
Right. All right, that sounds great.
Cool.
Okie doke. First, some logistics to hammer out. I opened a PR just to move some code around a little bit. Let me get that branch merged in, and then we can kind of move ahead. Now, I believe you had a suggestion on a function name. I think it was this one right down here. To render context, maybe we don't like the idea of putting the word context when the signature already has context as one of the arguments, right?
Yeah, I think I kind of like draw or render, because like we do have like our render functions, just like everything calls render recursively.
Yeah,
but draw feels good because it isn't doing quite. It doesn't quite feel like a render to me. I know I absolutely get why that wasn't what you picked.
Yeah, so let's actually take a look at it in context. Let's just take our bullet class, for example. So this is the render function for the bullets. We are sort of translating the world space position and the world space orientation of this entity into kind of draw space, right? And we're applying that to, interestingly, like the geometry of the model that we're trying to render. In a certain way, we've almost like in a 2D world sort of implemented this as if this was like a 3D game, which is kind of cool.
Yes.
I actually kind of like the way that we've done this.
I think it came out really good, and I like how flexible the system was when we went from tank to bullet. It felt excellent.
So what we do with that kind of model that is then kind of transformed by the entity's orientation and position is that we then just call some draw functions that are given to us by the browser Canvas API. And so the full render is this. We set a fill style, we begin a path, we do this magical thing in here, which is the function that we're talking about, and then we call fill, which basically I think closes off the render and will actually cause something to get updated in the underlying draw engine, which we assume just happens by magic, right?
Was there not an end path call originally?
I don't believe so. This is the code that's running right now, so it's working. Right.
Okay.
So there is no end path. I think fill or stroke is the way that you end it, right?
Okay. I can also see like begin path when repeated kind of is a superfluous. It just like it knows to keep ending. So that's great.
Right. So this is going to be a fascinating 5-minute bike shed over naming things. But names are fun, right? Names are important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Language matters, right? So the reason why I didn't call this like render path or something like that is because it's not really rendering the path. This whole thing, these 4 lines are rendering the path, and what this function in the middle is doing is something that's kind of intermediate. It is sort of applying the path points to the render context. The sort of class/type I created is called path2, and the reason why I called it that is it's basically just an array of objects, array of vectors, but it is sort of meant to be sort of a mesh or model that defines sort of like a 2D outline of something. So draw could be it. I was thinking about using the word apply somehow, like or render path points, something like that. Although render path points almost makes it sound like it's drawing a dotted, like a series of dots, right?
Yeah.
So,
honestly, I'm like pretty okay with this. The other names are hard. Yeah. Here's a question: should path be the first argument? Because I think all these static functions that I saw this and I was like, oh my god, it's so static. But then I realized that it's copying the style of GeoMatrix, and I was just like, everything starts with the thing you're applying.
Yeah. So what Dom is referring to is that this API here, technically you define the class, and I think this falls strictly into the category of like TypeScript hacks, where we're defining a class, but we're not defining any instance methods on it, right? There's no actual there's no functions you call in it where you can call with a dot, which quite frankly is a little bit annoying, but I think we are also copying the API that like GLMatrix gives us, which is sort of the same thing. And if you look at the type definitions for GLMatrix, they actually do the exact same thing. They export a class called vec2, which extends from, I think, float U32 array or float 32 array or something like that. And then they proceeded to define a bunch of like public static methods on it, right? Exactly. And what they're trying to do there is they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. They're trying to have vec2 be an actual type that you can use for annotations, but they also want it to be a namespace that houses functions. And the way that they do that is through this kind of like, we're going to like subclass something more primitive like float32 array or array vec2 or something like that, but then not actually define any methods on it. And so I kind of just like preserve that pattern here. So to bring it back around, Dom has suggested that we put the path as the first thing, which I think is totally fine and sensible. And why don't we go ahead and like update it here? Gosh, TypeScript is amazing. It tells us that
it's so good.
Yeah, it's really good. And same thing over here. Let's see here. What if we called it apply path? Is that weird? Path.apply path?
Path2.apply path. It makes more sense in this argument because we're applying the path to the render context, essentially.
Exactly.
So it has a very Swifty feel to it. Like it's sort of I like that you've done the method name as a sentence style.
Right.
I think apply path is good. It's kind of like the terminal state of a path to object, which is like you get written to the screen.
Okay, so it is written, so it shall be.
Great.
I'm gonna git commit a amend -- no edit. This is the total YOLO thing that we're doing here. Then we're going to check out master. We are going to fast forward merge path2, and we're going to push. It's just done now. It has been done. I could have hit the button in GitHub that just like squash merged, but we just
merge. Yeah,
we just did it. Yeah.
No, it's great.
All right. So we're back in the comforting embrace of master branch. All right. So you were thinking, what was it? Let's define some terrain, maybe some walls.
Yeah, let's make a wall entity, and then give ourselves the ability to place them on the map, and then see how collision feels.
Okay, that sounds great. Okay, so how do we want to edit the map?
I was thinking just a big old text file.
Okay, that works for me.
Yeah, kind of ended up with something that like looks like an old like a NetHack map where we have our own like mapping of symbols where it's just like star is a wall or star is a mine or something, but we can do a full basically maybe every entity defines what its symbol on the map should be.
Okay. So why don't we call this like world.map, something like that? It's just a text file.
Heck yeah.
And okay, so now we are. Oh, this is overly helpful. VS Code. I just made up my own extension. Is that bad? Should be world.map.text. Is that?
Oh God, no! I like world.map.
Okay, I like world.map too. We're like, this isn't a real game unless we've defined our own data formats, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So one thing we could do with maps is we can kind of let it be a little bit self-defining, where if we just like this is a map, right? And we could just make the dots mean something, right? Do we need any kind of header that tells the interpreter how big the map is, or should it just be totally inferred from the text definition?
I like the notion of inferring it, especially as we do. Like if we're ever to do scrolling or have the map be moving, I like that you just load up a canvas of any size and you get a map. Maybe like our edges are bordered by water, essentially, like it's an island. So if you make a tiny one, you get like a centered thing on a little screen, and if it's a big one, you can like walk to the edge, and that's where you end up. So,
okay, that's fantastic. Do we want to use Whitespace to mean anything?
I was gonna say no because it's not. Isn't it not a single character's width in even a font like this?
If it's a monospace font, it will be a single character.
Does it actually? Okay.
So we could have something like the only problem with Whitespace is that we can't see it in the text editor.
I was thinking dots are actually a really great like default character.
Like neutral. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's do dots. And so I'm actually happy with this being our map for now.
Let's start here. Yeah, let's see what we got.
And then let's make it 10 by 10. We'll call it, I'm on column 11, which is perfect. That's where I wanted to be, right? And then, so the only problem I think with doing a text file is this is technically a square, right?
That's what I was thinking. Is there a way to do like is there a font where every character is square? Because that'd be amazing.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Let's play with it for like a minute.
Okay.
Line height. Editor line height.
Is there letter width?
And is there a way I could just restrict this to just this particular extension? Because I don't want my code to look necessarily that badly.
We could write a VS Code extension for .map files.
Yeah, okay, so the nature of the stream is going to change abruptly now from being a game stream to a VS Code plugin stream. Probably for the next 12 to 18 months. I think that's what we're in line for right now.
Perfect.
Yeah, I love it. And how much more lucrative will it be for us and for everybody watching, right? Okay, I think the upshot is like maybe let's not worry about necessarily the geometry of this for now.
Wait, can you go back and look at letter spacing? Oh wait, we won't be able to do it for this file. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah. I mean, if you want, we can actually spend a couple minutes Googling this. Is that maybe a reasonable thing to do?
Well, maybe let's just find the letter space setting. So if we want to like work on the map, we can. Oh, you're thinking of turning down the line height.
Or spacing, yeah, that'll work too. For file extension, right? But you were talking about something else, which is the kerning, maybe?
Yeah, so see if it's described as that or not.
I doubt. Kerning is a Steve Jobs thing, not a Bill Gates thing, right? Like, so I was thinking line height because I actually think that is the issue here, right? It's the line height. Well, I don't know if it's line height per se, like.
Because if you put like a W in there for wall, it will be a fairly tall character. We don't want to crush them down too much.
Yeah. Well, it is line height, really, right? Look at how much, it's like almost a full character in between those two.
Oh yeah, that's true. If that got shorter, that'd be
So
nice.
what if
If you set line height in the first one to like 10, you'll get a much tighter thing.
is this the font size 10? Is that what it is? Oh my god! See, that looks like a square. That's looking pretty square.
That's great, and in fact, the W's look like water or walls.
Yeah, and our code is amazing too. That's the actual thing.
Yikes. Okay, well, let's keep that setting sort of in our back pocket when we want to look at the map as a square.
Okay.
Let's just hold on to it.
That is an intelligent thing to say, and then we go to 0. What happened here?
I don't know. Can you just reset the default?
Yeah. What's going on with my terminal here? Why is it? I have like a really tall cursor. I think it's just confused. I think it doesn't
change that line height to 0 too.
This one.
The number is multiplied by the terminal font size.
Okay. Order has been. I don't know what happened to that.
Why out of all settings would they be like everything's line height, but this one we like multiply a lot for you?
Yeah. There's got to be some way to do this. Okay, we're so down in this rabbit hole now that like I feel like.
No. Let's
give me
let's make a map.
Let's
make a map. Okay.
Let me give him 1 minute to just figure out how to do this. VS Code line height file extension. How VS Code file extension specific font. That's sort of VS Code. Use different font for file extension. Okay. I'm really losing my minute here.
Ooh.
Different things. Ooh. This is look at these two people are like, no.
Harsh.
Please explain more.
Oh my god, where are we?
What is this?
Is that a file type?
So this is just like people going back and forth, and then this guy here, MJ, just like drops the hammer. He's like, "No, we're gonna close the issue." And now there's this constant back and forth. Then again, this is like almost 3 years ago, right? Like, is there a?
Yeah, let's find the last comment. That's like we'll never implement this.
Option to disable automatic theme switching. So there is such a thing as automatic theme switching.
Only for me, for it's light and dark. Wait, go back down. You can change font and some color for differentiation in languages. Change font. That's all we want. Ooh.
Oh my god. What the hell is this, though? Is that like a scope?
I think if you do start, I bet if you do startup map, you'll get it.
And how do I edit my settings as JSON?
That's a great question. It's my least favorite part of these new Electron style editors.
Maybe this is a bit of a rabbit hole. We'll do it out between.
Yeah, we've got the answer. Just bookmark this or hang on to it.
Yeah. Okay. We know it's possible. Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. World.map. We've got this in there, and so what we're going to do is we have another thing to futz with, which is we're trying to determine where it's going to load the map, right? So this is main, creates a playfield.
I think playfield, it takes this as a parameter, maybe, the world.map.
Okay. And what does it take? It takes like an array of strings. Is that the idea?
It could also take just the file path and load it itself as, like, we're just going to define, like, load up, you know.
Yeah. You know what? I actually don't even want to deal with files right now. What I want to deal with is... Would you accept this as a...
Yep. Absolutely. Is this one of those triple backtick things, though?
What is triple backtick?
It's like block editing on other setups. We might not need it here.
I've lost my column indicator. Is that just not cool to do anymore? Is that what you're just quitting on me, Visual Studio? I like how it does tell me though that like it's in UTF-8. That's something I need to know all the time.
I think if you right click, you can turn those off because I turned all of them off. Yeah, dude. Turn off problems. Nobody wants problems.
All right, we're gonna do this old-fashioned way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 29 minus 20 is 9, plus 1 is 10. That is a 10 by 10 square.
Love it.
Yeah. And is there a way that I can trim Whitespace off of the top and sides? Because I don't really want to do this, right? That's kind of gnarly.
That is kind of gnarly. Let's do it though. It'll be fine. Is there just a string trim in JavaScript? Because I would expect it to do that.
JavaScript trim Whitespace.
Maybe we need to install
Dot
unleft pad.
Dot trim.
Beautiful.
Yes. Okay.
Perfect.
And then the playfield will take a map, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the playfield takes a map, which is a string.
Mm-hmm. And
And then we do some parsing here, right?
Yep.
And we'll just put all the parsing code in here. I think probably eventually we'll do parsing outside of the playfield class. But okay, so we'll do single string dot split along new lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, if we wanted to be real cool, we'll do the trimming here. That actually makes a little bit more sense to me.
Harder to screw up for sure.
Yeah, it's a little bit more. And I'm going to get rid of world.map, this ambitious but ultimately futile experiment in file extension creation. Did that tweet? Okay. It's weird that it took that long to do. And we're going to get rid of this because it's ugly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've got our rows, not straight, but map.
Uh-huh.
And so our playfield height is going to be rows dot length at this point, right?
Yep, exactly.
And then our width is arbitrarily going to be just the width of the first row. Is that how we want to roll? Okay.
That sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. Equals map of rows 0 dot. Do strings have length? Is that Java?
Yeah. Yep.
Gotta get.
Isn't it great? Just like, does JavaScript do this, or am I thinking of a real language? Yeah.
Width. And are we using these constants anywhere? I think we're gonna have to store these as member variables. Or actually, it's kind of defined by this, right?
It is, yeah. Just do a quick search in the project, but I think we've mostly skipped it.
Maybe we can do height, right? Something like this.
Mm-hmm.
Return this dot tiles dot length,
Mm-hmm.
and then width. Return this dot tiles dot
Tiles 0 dot
zero
length, yeah.
dot length.
Mm-hmm.
Very good, sir.
So if you go back now, the game field should be much smaller. But it's not.
Yeah. I think our tank is still there. Our tank is still alive.
Yeah, but I was expecting 10 rows and not. Oh, you know what? Nope, that makes sense.
We haven't updated a lot of our other, a lot of some of this other code. So,
Yeah. So
we'll definitely get to it.
Yeah, 10 across is good.
Let me close some of this other stuff, and then I'm gonna get rid of that. That's okay. Now I have a little bit more breathing room. Okay, so the row is this sucker, and then what we want to do is we actually want to split the string into individual characters. Is there array access in JavaScript for a string? Is there such a thing?
That's a great question.
A, B, C, and then 0. Oh my god.
That's easy.
And it works, and then that's going to be undefined. And then,
So, yeah, interesting.
does it do this? No, it doesn't. Okay. Well, we just tested the boundaries of the language.
Mm-hmm.
Not the worst in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So in fact, the constructor is fine right now, I think. And I think it's our render that's exceeding our bounds because it's not checking width and height.
Yeah. Okay. Like so?
That's it.
Right. And then we basically said we were going to draw our whole viewport is defined in main.ts, and that is hard-coded, right?
Mm-hmm.
So probably what we'll want to have is the viewport be defined by the playfield size.
I think so, yeah.
Or we can center the map in the playfield.
Oh.
Probably, let's do the simple thing first and just make the viewport the same size. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep. And really, that's just so playfield.width and playfield.height. Is that it?
Pixel height. I don't love this. We'll factor this out. This dot height times tile size.
Mm-hmm.
Oops.
Mm-hmm.
And then this will be playfield dot pixel width.
Mm-hmm.
Playfield dot pixel height. Ooh,
looks good.
And we are off by 1 somewhere.
That's unpleasant. How is that even possible?
Well, it depends on what FillRect is actually doing.
What would happen if you took away the weird borders I added? Yeah, let's unstroke it and see. I always feel like that does strange things. There you go. It was a stroke. Yes, it's not clearing the canvas. Oh, yes. That's amazing.
Yeah, I love these kind of like weird artifacts, right?
Mm-hmm. That's perfect. Cool.
Okay, great. Do we want to do different stuff? I mean, this is kind of cool, right? Oh, it's funny.
Yeah.
We already defined all these like terrain types, right?
Yeah. Well, do we want a quick switch in the read for that so we can define some like? Should we at least make the period grass? Like, let's start reading that.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so maybe we have a kind of like public static. Wait, is it common that we define all this stuff in?
A lot of it, yeah. We have terrain as a thing already.
Export function, or just, is it export const?
Yep.
It's like deserialize tile, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a string, and what it returns is a terrain.
Yep, I think so.
Deserialize terrain, right? Am I doing this right, colon, or is it just this, or is it arrow? I've just worked on like 5 different languages recently, so I always forget.
You need to put an arrow after terrain, right?
Surely we have something that does this already. Oh, I see what you're saying. This is this.
It's fat. It should be a fat arrow, right? Oh, yeah, equals, yeah.
And then we just have to return something. Okay,
yep.
So we switch on the string, and tell me that JavaScript allows us to switch on full string values, right? It does, right?
Yeah, that's so.
Okay, so dot is case dot.
Mm-hmm.
Return terrain dot grass, right? Mm-hmm. And then what I would like to do is have a default case that returns terrain dot unknown, maybe.
Okay. Yep.
We'll add unknown in here.
Mm-hmm.
And then unknown we'll paint as like magenta or something like that, right?
Yeah. I love when I see games breaking. It's just like we picked the weirdest color we could because you need to know it's broken.
Exactly. So magenta, I believe, is full red, no green, full blue. I want to say. And then, so now let's go to our map and see if we can break. Oh, we're not reading from the map yet. We're not using this yet, so we won't know if that's rendering correctly for a little while.
Right.
So let's take this, and in this renderer, what we're actually saying is the type is deserialized. It's we got to pull this out here, right? Deserialized terrain.
Yep. But I do think that VS Code might do that for you automatically.
Oh, nice.
Sometimes.
I will avoid doing it then, and it's going to be like a. What is the variable? It'll be rows I j.
Yep. Well, that's convenient.
And so far it looks good, but what if I did this? Added the space there. Oh, nice.
That's awesome.
That's what we wanted, right? We've got a map editor now. We're done. Ship the game. Ship it to production. Profit.
Needs more magenta. Much more magenta.
Well, we can do that, right?
This looks great.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, so what are we thinking? Some water? What kind of terrain do we want? We've got rivers, we've got grasses.
Yeah.
It's like a country song. It's like a bluegrass song that we have here.
Yeah, maybe let's define both of those in our deserialize.
Okay.
And paint a couple on the map and see what we get. It's interesting. Yeah. I feel like the difference between terrain and like an entity like a wall is maybe going to be confusing. I'd also maybe want to put the player as a thing on the map where it's like, this is where the tank starts. Like there should be a P and we should pull that out somehow.
Yeah. So
but it's more complex than the enum, right?
Yeah. So I think the thing you're talking about right now is layering, which is tricky. So we would have multiple layers. One layer defining kind of like the immutable stuff that doesn't change about the level, and then we'd have n number of layers for other things that might change or move around, right? Entities or objects or other types of things, right? The problem with that, though, is it gets a little bit tricky to define that in a text file as we are here, right? So we could. I'm trying to think of what the right way to accomplish this might be.
Is it just two maps?
It could be. I mean, two maps is probably the easiest thing to do. It's just going to be a little bit difficult to kind of like eyeball it back and forth. But we could do something where we just like switch tabs like this. Just make sure it's lined up correctly, and then just see if it. And then quickly we get into the territory of like, oh, maybe we should just have an editor, right?
Right.
Which actually will be fun to do, right? And there are like maybe two different directions we can go with the editor. Is either we use something like the one that everybody used. Tiled map editor. I don't know if you've seen this one before.
No.
But it is fairly simplistic, and they even do ISO, which is cool. This might be a little bit much for us, and I think they're also assuming that you have kind of rich graphics for every tile, right? Every tile is actually a little pixel buffer in and of itself, whereas what we're doing here is just like solid colors.
What is the output of this? Like, do we get an image, or is this meant to be integrated into the project? It's just for editing and designing.
I think it's meant to be. I think what you're going to get out of this editor is going to be like a bundle. It's going to be like this complex binary format that we would parse.
Gotcha.
And it would include some of the stuff. But I believe my buddies who made Shovel Knight. Just use this, I'm sure they have a bunch of other tools that they've baked in house, but they do use tiled, or at least they did at one point.
That makes sense. Cool.
Yep. So nothing to sneeze at here. Let's just do two maps, right?
Yeah.
Before we get into that, why don't we talk about just other types of terrain, like rivers and things like that?
Let's get rivers and mountain.
What if we did tilde for the river, or something like this?
Oh, I like it, yeah.
And then maybe like that. And then we're talking mountains as well, so how about carrot?
Carrot, yep.
I feel like I'm like 12 years old designing a D&D map all of a sudden.
I know, it's amazing.
It's pretty cool, right?
I love it.
Okay. And now we just got to render that.
Which is going to be uncommon for the terrain deserial. Yeah.
Should this just be like export?
Oh, dude, you
map
could
const terrain string terrain by encoding.
I think the terrain enum could actually take strings. Like do mountain : carry on line 6.
Oh, you're right.
TypeScript does this, right?
It does, but then how do we access? Well, let's just follow through here.
Yeah. And so maybe unknown becomes a property of the render when it's like this didn't match the type. We do something
equals
else.
Unknown, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
And then how do we do this though? Don't we need a lookup table of some kind?
No, I think we don't because we just pass the character. We pass the type. We pass the type as the single character into the playfield renderer, right? Maybe. It's hard to get unknown out of that.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting is like TypeScript needs to export some runtime level function that allows us to kind of like introspect or reflect on this type so that we know if it's not included in the set of things here, right? So I'm gonna just do the lookup table thing for now, but let's actually put a bookmark in this idea because I like it.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So this is terrain.grass, and then the tilde. Oh, it's either one too many quotes or 0 or however many I don't want. River. Mountain. And then we're just going to return terrain by encoding of S or terrain.unknown.
I love it. Oh, wow. There's your river.
There is. Now, what's interesting is the mountain isn't making it in there.
That is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wait, go back to playfield. There was why is there a red? Terrain.unknown needs a colon. On 59, I don't know if there's a syntax error if that's doing it. Okay, still broken, because it's definitely working.
Okay, well, it got the river in there, right?
Yeah.
And this one we want it to be unknown because
I wanted to keep one in there. Yeah. Go back to common. What's going on with that?
Did I? Mountain is 0. It's falsy. Right. So what we want is actually something a little bit more annoying, right? Like const t equals this if t equals undefined. Is that the way to do undefined?
Yep. Return terrain unknown. Hey.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there we go.
Very cool. Falsy.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Boy, I love the drifting you can do.
Yeah. Oh, I lost it. Who knows where now? Okay,
nice.
That's fantastic.
Cool. Okay, so I think another map that we hand to the entity manager.
You're saying we hand the playfield to the entity manager?
No, whatever we're doing that is putting a wall on the map. I was thinking that the map editor would contain everything in one. But you're right that we want to be able to layer something. The ground below a wall matters as well. So we need map and entities or something.
Yeah, so what you are saying is you want the play field
Ooh, yeah, now you're talking.
to be this.
Mm-hmm.
And then we want entities to be this. Or
I was thinking that, yeah.
okay. Great. And then what we could kind of do is I don't know, this might be really confusing, but just figure out a way if we can line it up and eyeball it. Because having them sort of stack vertically like this, I think it's just trial and error, right?
Yeah.
Now, so the plan here with the entities is to be able to just place an icon, and let's stick a mountain over here. So
Oh, you need a curly close, and also map.playfield on line, yeah, 39.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And we're going to want like something to mean the starting point. Is that correct? And maybe
Yeah,
dot means nothing on this in this representation.
I think dot can mean nothing here, yeah. Yeah, I was thinking P for player and W for wall.
Okay. So we'll start the player up, maybe right here.
Yeah.
And then the wall can be, let's just do it a simple way like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's make sure that the player gets read correctly, right? Which means we need some interaction with the way that we spawn the player and the way that we read the playfield.
Yeah, so Entity Manager probably takes map.entities in its constructor and then just goes to town on a similar switch, but
Yeah.
it needs to know about every entity individually, so it probably has a bunch of imports to do.
I think abstraction-wise, maybe we won't burden the entity manager with that, and we would use something a little bit different.
It will have a weird thing of like, that's a big circular dependency on the entity manager.
Right. The entity manager is like just the container for a set of entities, and we might have multiple entity managers at some point.
Sure.
I've been thinking about this a little bit, where at a certain point, like we're gonna have to start reading the playfield from the entities to know like what we're interacting with. And so maybe rather than a pointer to the entity manager, you know how like our entity has like knows which manager it's inside of?
Yeah.
Perhaps what we really mean, when do we actually use this? Is that?
Do we use it? Go into player and see if we use manager.
Yeah.
Oh, we use it to add bullets. The bullets have to go into the manager.
Yeah. So I think this is why, right? It's because we have this .manager here. But what if instead an entity had something a lot more general, like game? And this was the thing that had a set of entity managers. It had a reference to the playfield. It had all kinds of stuff that you might want to access as an entity. Does that seem reasonable? Because like before, I think what we were getting at is like maybe we wanted to add a playfield in here so that like you knew what the playfield was inside the entity.
We do have to, don't we? Like for moving the player over terrain, we have to know like what it's on.
Yeah, eventually we're gonna have to do that collision, right? Yeah.
And that's interesting because that's not even like it's a collision. It's also like it modifies the move. It's not just like we stop, but we have to change our velocity while we're in there. So less of that just like did we hit it yes or no thing we were doing before and then stopping.
Right.
So yeah, it needs to know when it's in, when it's out.
Yeah.
Probably a percentage of in or out. Yeah. So that's a. Yeah, I see why the global game object feels right for that.
Yeah, I mean, what we could do is make the playfield its own entity, and then stick that in another entity manager, right?
Yeah, but we do need to be able to ask for any tile players on what's below me.
Yeah.
And am I touching something like?
So what you're saying is that the playfield is going to have like a special interface that not all entities have, and it's useful to know of it as a playfield as opposed to as being an entity.
Yeah. Well, if we're thinking of something like we like the faceted bolo where you drop a bomb and you make more river, like the playfield changes and lives, so a lot of things need to know about it.
Yeah.
What's the right way to model that?
Let me propose that we start a game.ts.
Okay.
So we're putting like the containers inside containers. I do worry that maybe I am prematurely abstracting here, but whatever.
Let's see what we get.
Entities is an entity manager. Oh, and it auto imports.
Isn't that cool? It's so cool.
Is a playfield. And then maybe this has an update. And maybe it also has a render. Maybe it looks like we're sort of having this sort of abstract notion of some things that update and things that render. And what we can do is we can say this dot entities dot render, this dot playfield dot render, this dot entities dot update. And we're assuming that the playfield doesn't update yet, but it might, right?
Right.
And then what do? We take a map.
Yep.
Which is a string. Right? And yeah,
that.
This stuff. So
I
clearing
think
this.
I think that should go in render.
Render of the game, right?
Yeah.
Or we let this be the whole. Yeah, let's just do it in the game.
Let's do it in the game.
Yeah. Like this, right?
And
it'd be this dot playfield. This stuff.
Yeah, and that exposes that context needs to come through here because those playfield and entity render both takes context.
Yes, TX. And then this is just going to be game.up. Oops. We don't have a game yet, right? We need to create a game. Game equals new game, the map, right? Game.update, game.render of the context.
That's all gone.
That's all gone. Okay, it's having a hard time finding this because I'm not exporting it.
Because you're not exporting it.
Then
maybe save this file again.
Game. Oh, really? That'll just do it.
Maybe you have to autocomplete game once you're in there. Yeah.
Oh yes. Oh, that's sweet. I love it.
So map isn't a string; it's a object right now.
Okay, you're right. So this needs to be some kind of interface, right? Let's go to common.ts and let's call it. It's like a serialized map, right? That's kind of the. I mean, it's not even serialized because it's kind of divided up into.
I think we should call it game map because I'm worried map will just make something upset.
Sure. Playfield. String. Entities is also a string.
Yep.
And then game takes game map.
Great.
And then it's going to be this dot playfield.
And this dot entities.
This dot manager. The player it is having a hard time with. It's having a hard time with the player. We'll figure that out. That's the case. Oh.
Just needs an import, I think. It just didn't figure it out. That might conflict with like some JavaScript audio playback stuff.
I see. This dot entities. And then CTX. Oh wow.
Cool.
Just like that.
Looks real to me.
Yep.
Oh my god, wait.
That was dope.
Can you do that a lot more? Yes, dude. That's amazing.
This is just like the coolest art program that you could possibly use. Yeah, this is what happens when you have no clipping, kids. Remember to clip.
ABC, always be clipping. That looks amazing.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled.
Yeah. It's cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we want to be able to read the entities and figure out what entities we need to populate here, right? So there's going to be a lot of business logic in here, reading the entities layer of the map that we're receiving, right?
Correct.
Okay, so what's the best way to do this? I guess we kind of just take the same loop that we defined here, right? And we probably need this as well. Yeah. We're just going to borrow some of these names, and then it's not map here. It's going to be map.entities, right? So we're going to populate entities here. So here is an interesting thing. It's not this .tiles. We're really just going to be adding things to the entity manager.
I think we just register stuff, and entity has a position, right? If not, everyone might need a position essentially.
Yes. We don't have any walls yet. Maybe we can just render a bunch of players for the walls for now.
Sure. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Oh no,
and it's just going to get really confusing render-wise, right?
They're all going to move together. It's going to be amazing.
Exactly.
Okay. Did you play Baba Is You?
I did. I got like...
It's hard, but player is wall is what I'm thinking. Or wall is player.
Yeah. This is wall is player. That's exactly right.
Player is wall kills you.
I probably got like 3 or 4 dozen maps into Baba Is You.
Then your brain just melts, yeah.
It melted, yeah. And my brain melted. I wish... You know what? That game is like just barely along the line because like the genre of Baba Is You, I think, is called Sokoban. Like when you sort of like do block pushing. But the problem is like you can only push blocks and not pull them, and so you have to like really figure out your ordering correctly. And I tend to have a pretty short attention span for Sokoban games because a lot of it ends up being the same skill that's required of you in chess, which is like how many forking futures can I like keep in my head? Like how many like the exponential expansion of possibilities in my head? Like how can I figure that out? And yet, Baba Is You, I think for the large part, at least for the levels that I played, avoids that entirely. Like you have to do it a little bit, but it's really more about finding the hook. There's like one little trick on every level. But I'm like slightly worried in the back of my head that it's going to sort of degenerate into that, like, okay, you just have to like project in your mind like where it's going to go. You know, the worst of that is like a sliding block puzzle. If you see those little plastic sliding block puzzles where you have to like,
And I never found those fun. I don't know why.
No, because they're not fun, right? It's just like, let me run a recursive algorithm in my head and like literally try everything. You know, that's. Yeah.
Right, that's just it. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Wall is player.
Wall is player. That's all I wanted to say. Yeah.
Okay. So we are iterating over this, and we're just going to assume there's no data integrity issues. Like this is just gonna like throw or crash if the map is poorly structured, right? There's nothing guaranteeing that we have the same number of rows and columns between the raw map playfield and the raw map entity list, but we're just going to go for it here.
Yeah, I think we just live with it and deal with what happens.
Okay. So what we're going to say here is we're just going to switch off of, I guess it's map, it's rows. It's entity
rows IJ.
I, J. And then default is to do nothing, right? But then if it is a P, this is where the player is going to go, right? Yeah. So we're going to do like, do you like doing this for your cases, or do you just?
I feel like I used Prettier a lot. I think Prettier didn't like that, and I was always very kind of like, why? Like, this is the most ambiguous set of statements, but yeah.
Is it going to be constant? Is it going to complain if I use the same letter multiple times? It probably will. Whatever.
I think you should be in a very good scope.
Okay. Const P equals new player. P dot pause. Okay, so this is interesting. What we want that to be in is like the center of the tile. Is that right? And the control point is like the very center. Our tiles are our floating point. So we can actually make because like I was a little bit worried because I think they're even number of pixels right now, right?
Yes.
It's like 16 pixels by 16 pixels is our tile size. Is that right?
That sounds right, yeah.
Okay, well, let's just look it up. Tile size 16. Okay. So the position is going to be, it's vector, right? Vector from values. The X position is J times tile width.
Well, tile size is the same.
Tile size plus 0.5, I think. And then vec2, it's not finding. Oh.
I don't think we did we expose this yet? The player just picks its own position, right?
Did we expose it or not? Oh, it's dot position. Yes. So what's interesting is entity does not have a position.
I think it should.
Yeah.
And I think for the rest of them, we maybe do want to assume top left corner and draw from there, but the player is the only thing that we're rotating around like a center point right now, which maybe helps us.
Yeah, but like you could make bullets are rotated around the center point as well, right?
Oh, maybe everything should have a center point then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so what we're looking at here is we're starting to like come up with this. This is sort of like our collection of things. Is that right?
I think so.
Okay. Great. There's again, like I think I mentioned this last stream or a stream before that. There's like a very rich set of conversations that we can have about what properties we actually put into the entity, as opposed to do we use inheritance or do we use composition or other things, right? Because we could have entities that don't have position and orientation if we wanted to, right? That's one way.
Right.
Yeah. But maybe we'll say that for next stream or the stream after that.
Yeah, that feels good though.
Okay, so let's do that, right? Let's go ahead and is it common.ts that we define entities in here, or is it entity.ts?
Entity.ts, yeah.
And then, of course, it's fine back to...
Yeah, and we have to be careful because making those non-optional suddenly means that constructors need to handle everything.
Yeah.
But making them optional means that suddenly you gotta do optional checks everywhere, so...
Yeah. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Although, this does start to feel like...
We set it in the constructor, so it's safe as a non-optional on this one. Probably on bullet, too.
Yeah, right. So this needs to go into bullet as well, right? And we should already have it. It's just not.
Yeah, I think make it non-optional. Maybe you can't. Every entity constructor needs to set that.
Oh, okay. Is not optional.
Totally allowed because yeah.
The constructor is this weird gray zone, right? You were allowed to do this.
You get to set in the constructor, and that allows non-optionality.
Yeah.
So then, so game.ts, dot position, we'll set that.
Yeah. So are we still creating the player somewhere? Is main.ts doing it?
Yeah, I think so. No?
Or is game.ts is doing it?
We copied it into game.ts, didn't we?
Oh, yeah.
Let's call that.
So this is what we want. And really, this should be E.
Try E. I think you can get
What we could do is we could say let entity equals null. Entity equals this. Entity, and then what we can do is down here, if entity not equals null.
I like that. Yep.
And then this can also be factored out as well, right? That's probably what we want.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a player. If you put case W and do that, you should get it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be delightful. Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Multi-ball.
All right, the game is over. This
just keeps getting better.
This is bringing programming back to its weaving roots. You know, like everything used to be looms, right? Like powered looms. And like basically the first programmers were seamstresses, right? Or master tailors. Truly masters of their craft, right? Boy, this is awesome. Did you even imagine that this is what we would be doing?
This is not where I thought this would go, but I'm really, really happy about it.
Yeah. Maybe we should actually make a wall.
Let's make a wall.
Okay, let's make a wall.
But I'm excited by the multi-tank fleet possibility. It's a whole different game, but I'd play it.
Did you play any of the space shooters, R-Type, Gradius, any of those?
Yeah. Where your ship could get like a bunch of things attached to it.
Yeah, exactly. What do they call it? Gradius? They call it option.
Option.
Mm-hmm. That was the name of the little like followers.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, it was real good. Yeah, it was a great game.
All right, change it. It's Gradius now.
Wall.ts?
Wall.ts.
What is your philosophy on capitalization of file names in TypeScript?
Probably should have capitalized all these that export classes.
Okay.
But like, I think I made these and I forgot, so.
Word. Okay, we'll do a refactoring pass midstream or between streams.
Yeah, we can rename some stuff. That's fine.
Export class, wall, implements, entity. I'm one of those people that just likes to narrate as I'm typing.
It's delightful. You're much better than I am, and it's extremely entertaining for everyone, I'm sure.
Well, there's this one of the great pianists of the 20th century, a guy by the name of Glenn Gould, who's just the master of playing J.S. Bach, right? Just the NBD, J.S. Bach, one of the greatest composers of all time. Just real chill. He would sing the Bach as he would play it. Like he would just
that's cool.
He would sing it, which was very darling. It was very endearing.
It probably means he could sight sing it too, which is always very impressive.
Right. Import entity. Come on.
You really gotta let the tab completion take over, otherwise.
It just didn't do it. Why is he having a problem with wall?
No, it's
incorrect. You know what? It's just whining now. But in a good way, right? We just want all this stuff. In fact, we just
take bullet instead.
I think we just want all of this stuff, right? I just took everything.
No, we don't want speed or key map or shape. We do. Shape's good.
We totally want a shape, and then all this
None
stuff.
of that.
And the update is going to be really dramatic for a while. It's going to be this for now.
Yeah.
And then the render.
Well, this is good. If you keep this, it'll render a player. So we can at least let's get it out of the class and then add the shape.
Okay. What do we need? It's not complaining anything. We should get rid of this stuff, right?
Yeah, but I think you're good.
I think we're good. And then the game. This is not reloading though. So something is we've got problems.
Not according to VS Code. Isn't that the best?
Oh, you know what it is? We're just not spawning it. That's just it. And now it's complaining.
You haven't imported that.
You know what? There's going to be a directory called entities with an index.
Oh yeah, we need an index type. Hey, all right. Shapes.
And no interaction with walls. Yeah.
Not yet.
Okay, let's draw a wall, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
So a wall is going to be just full tile size, corner to corner. Yep. Or we can simplify it if we just want to make it a rectangle and not care about orientation at all. I don't know. I like having oriented walls. Collision is going to be a pain in the ass, but maybe we can not worry about it.
So you're thinking that the wall, like it's either a wall like this or like this? I was thinking the simple bowler wall is that like
tilted 45 degrees even. Like,
oh lordy. I was thinking the bolo style walls are very like they're very much rectangles, but they have that fancy render when they're next to another wall, and they render all these weird join paths depending on their context. I'd like to keep like our let's stick with like single tile things. Orientation maybe for shooting.
Yeah.
But 45-degree wall, oof, that's scary.
So maybe this is all. Well, we can still do this stuff. We can still.
Yeah.
The orientation is just going to be 0. Here,
it's always
right?
0.
It's always 0, and then this is going to be negative tile size times 0.5.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the upper left corner.
Yep.
And then we're going to go to the upper right. And then we're going to go to the lower right, which is positive. And then this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then gray, maybe?
Yeah, totally.
Can we just do this? Is that functional?
Indeed,
oh my god, yes.
Okay, so we're
maybe
in
a
the
little bit darker. Yes, I love it.
Nice.
And then we're slightly off by 1, which is fine. I think I'm okay with that.
We're slightly off. What do you mean? Is there a stroke on there?
Let me. Do you see that?
Yeah.
It's misinterpreting my arrow keys here.
So but, I noticed that we gave it a position, and yet it's drawing on half tiles. Did we not give it the right center point?
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, where's the player starting?
Also on a half tile.
Player is also on a half tile.
Well, I guess I can guess an easy way to do this, which is...
What if we just get rid of the +0.5? This doesn't make sense to me, but let's just trim it out and see what happens.
Yep.
Didn't change.
Why didn't...
There's something funky going on, right?
Yeah. Wait, hang on. Is that... Why is it +0.5? That's not in the correct unit. Is it J plus tile size times 0.5?
Yes.
Yeah. I think we accidentally got things that looked like they were kind of in the right spot. It was on half tiles. Perfect.
Oh, yes. Let me see what I get.
Nice. And is the pixel gone between those things? It looks like it from here.
It definitely is, yeah.
Cool. That makes sense, because we picked we just had a strange number, and they were off half a pixel, so...
And then, like, here we're going to see kind of, like...
You're trying to do Z-fighting?
Yeah, well, it's not going to fight, because I think we are getting strict iteration order on our entities. But if we had defined the player down in the lower right corner, I bet we get some Z-fighting, right? Like, if we did...
Really? Oh, because of the order of the entities. Yes,
Yeah.
I see.
So if we did it down here and then we drove over, yeah.
I gotcha.
At least that is easy to reason about, right? For now.
Yeah, and I do think eventually, and so if you shoot a bullet, it should be on top of the walls and everything.
Yeah.
Yep, that's fine. I think ultimately, I'm excited to break out the entity manager into update and render by type, or at least render by type, so we can control that better. And that feels like it'll make sense.
Yeah, what I would love to do actually, this is where I think it's going, is that we would have.
Because like if we had trees and you could drive through them, I'd want to render those on top of the player. Maybe like a little transparent.
We would do something like EA.
Yeah.
That makes sense, right? And
yeah,
then,
it does.
So maybe what we can do now. It feels like the logical next thing is collision. Do we want to get into that whole thing?
Let's do it because I think we've got a stronger vector library this time. Like it's much easier. Can we just use geometrics to be like, do we intersect? Like, can we do shape intersection and call it a day?
I don't think so. I think geometry. Well, we have the vector math to be able to do it. It's just that we're gonna have to get really deep into it.
Okay.
But I'm ready for it. If you're ready for it,
let's do it. Yeah, we have 40 minutes. I think we can come up with a good one in 40 minutes.
Okay.
So we're gonna have. Is our player our only collider? No, bullets are also like bullets collide with walls maybe. So yeah. We don't want to make a single like something that only makes the player work. So what is the thing that checks like collisions with everything? Is it part of every entity's update function that it decides like player and bullet both have to be like, am I on top of something? Let me ask the entity manager what's in this position.
That is generally what happens. Yeah.
Okay.
Now we can do it again a lot of different ways where it's like we have this matrix of considerations, right? We care about entities colliding with walls. Mm-hmm. We care about bullets colliding with other entities that are hittable by bullets. Yep. We care about entities colliding with the border of the entire world. Mm-hmm. We care with entities in general colliding with playfield objects as well, right? Like if we have impassable playfield objects.
Yep. Yep.
So you can start to see why having like a generic way of querying entities based on like what they are like actually starts to become a little bit interesting. Or even if you didn't have something generic, you maybe want to organize your entities into different categories so you could make these types of things easier to do. The game loop that I remember working on, we ran the bullets first, and then we ran all like the character style entities, like dudes running around, and including the player. And then those would handle their own world collision. So they would basically, like, every time we updated one of those, they would do their own world collision. But that means that we were interleaving world collision with other business logic that each entity was doing. So generally, that takes the shape of a state machine, right? You say, like, I'm an entity, and I'm currently in this mode. And it's like this switch statement. Which mode am I in? And if I'm in mode A, I'm going to do the business logic for mode A. If I'm in mode B, I'm going to do the business logic for mode B. And some of that business logic might be to change modes, right? I might go from ducking to jumping to shooting or something like that. Mm-hmm. All that said, maybe in order for us to do collision, we are trying to basically say that the player, or the bullets, etc., need to know other stuff in the world. So maybe rather than having the entity manager here, what we need is the game.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Are we going to be back down to a circular dependency, though?
We are, but in a sense, it might be unavoidable unless we do this differently. Like, we could do collision as part of the game. Like, game... Yeah, go ahead.
No, let's give it... I feel like importing game into player feels right. Let's give it a shot and see if JavaScript gets mad at us. We can work around that.
Yeah, because I think the other things that we could do here is in the update here, we would say... collide moving entities with walls collide bullets with bullet hittable entities. So this is a way that we would do it where we essentially turn the game logic inside out. It's not the entities that are updating themselves, it's the world that is like reading the entities as if they're just data, right?
Yeah.
And that's totally fine too. What is a little bit interesting is that like sometimes there is logic internal to the entity that you want to update, and so it's kind of like, well, where do you actually want to put this logic? Is it going to be inside the entity? Is it outside of it? And if you do have it inside the entity in one place and outside the entity in another, why did you make that division, right?
Yeah, I think let's put it inside. I can think of how to make TypeScript happy if we hit this problem.
Okay.
I don't like that it's like a language implementation choice that would drive us away from that. So
yeah, I mean, we have it ish here, right? Because the entity manager points to the entity or it contains it, but
literally a TypeScript circular inclusion, which it gets really unhappy about.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think the way that I do that, well, first of all, does the game care about players?
Yeah, because it creates them.
It does. It creates them.
The fix, I think, is to define
an interface.
Yeah, a game interface, and player has a game interface object, and we pass that in, and game implements it.
I think that's exactly the way I did that in that the 3D rendering demo that I did. So we would have like export interface iGame, right?
Yep.
And then it would look
exactly like that. Yeah.
As such. Oops, common. And then do you say that this implements iGame?
I would say so, yeah. I would say that I think we just introduced the circular dependency into common now. Because those two will start a whole import chain. Maybe making playfield entity manager not depend on common would be part of that. Or giving iGame its own, like iGame.ts.
Yeah.
There's some options.
Okay.
Let's do it here. I mean, TypeScript sometimes doesn't raise a stink.
No, I totally see where this is going. This is kind of like a crappy part of TypeScript, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because like any other language would let you do this.
Yep.
I think.
Most of them, yeah. Let's look in playfield entity manager real quick and just see what they depend on too. If they don't use common, we're fine. So all that stuff, yeah. Okay. And does any of that actually common, or is it all part of playfield? Tile size is used everywhere.
Yeah, and maybe we just need to split common apart into like objects or something like that versus constants.
Oh yeah, I think game is definitely this weird thing that we're gonna have to like slurp in to like every facet of it. So I think iGame.ts doing just this, and you can import it everywhere, should be safe. Because the key is that player won't need to import game. Player already can deal with playfield and entity manager.
Okay. So if I tried importing playfield here,
I think TypeScript will start shouting.
Yeah. Okay. Can we do something else? Let's try. Interfaces.
Mm-hmm.
Is that horrible?
I really think it should be like game interface specific, because like terrain can't go in there because it will be
iGame. Yes. Is that what you're suggesting? Right.
Yeah, it's a gross way to do it.
And then we need to import. But this is going to be a circular dependency because we want entity.ts to have a game, right? We want it to have this.
We want it to have an iGame. So if entity manager leaves, or entity goes into something else.
If we do iGame here, and then what if we did everything as an interface? Is that crazy? What if we did iPlayfield, iEntity, I
That's totally
manager?
safe. Yeah. That's, you know what? That's probably the TypeScript. And it's nice since entity was never a class. That works wonderfully. Playfield and entity manager, yeah. Now I see how every TypeScript project ends up with this file in it.
Right. And this could all go back into common.ts theoretically, right?
Yes, it can.
Okay. Let's keep it there if we can. And then
that too is fine.
We've got to fill this stuff out. And Entity Manager has an update and a render. Is that it?
I think so, yeah.
It probably has.
It has register and mark for deletion.
Yes. And it probably has a way to grab the entities as well, like to look them up by ID or something like that, right? Is it iEntity?
It should be like e:\entity. It needs a parameter name.
Oh, so we actually have to name them in the.
The name's not important, but you have to like distinguish the parameters.
Yeah. Okay. And then register is the same thing.
I think did register return the entity itself because we were doing that nice like you get it at the other side. It returns like an iEntity. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then the playfield, we don't know what it looks like yet. I think playfield has a render at least, right? I guess it's got all these things. Yes.
Well, let's start with render because at the we're not sure that we need this everywhere we use iPlayfield, but like probably.
We do call pixel height and pixel width somewhere.
I think only in the place where we construct the playfield does, and we're not using the interface for that.
Yeah, we do it on the
canvas. So. But that's fine. That's fine here because the playfield class is what we're importing, not the iPlayfield.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, the only where we have to stick it places. So
I have a feeling that we're going to need that.
Okay. I feel like we need something more like object at position or something, or like the tiles will be more valuable. But yeah. Render is the same as every other. Yeah. Nice.
Okay. Boy.
I know, it's not annoying. Yeah.
A lot of boilerplate. But it's hard.
It is going to save us from a very bad problem.
It'll be really good. Yeah, it'll be great. Okay, so entity export class implements iEntity manager, right? And this is a bunch of iEntities. Also iEntity. This should be an iEntity.
Yep.
These annotations will help us in the end, right? And then, oh, this doesn't actually return. Our register does not return.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
I don't know why I thought that did.
Boy, this feels like C++ all of a sudden. We are like defining like a header file.
Thanks,
I kind of
Microsoft.
like it though, perversely. Oh, I think you might have taken my.
I was gonna type void.
Okay.
But then my keyboard decided not to work, so we're good.
Okay. And then playfield implements iPlayfield. That's basically good, right? The player implements iEntity. What is complaining about?
Entity import, and also the manager is the iEntity manager.
Like that. And that's actually going to turn into game, I think. Right. That's what eventually what we want. In fact, I already made it that.
Oh, great. Okay.
Okay.
So then it definitely needs to be that.
So we'll go file by file here. And this is the game.
Mm-hmm.
This .game
entities.
And that may become bullets, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then we need to import iGame, right?
Mm-hmm. Cool. And then
this no longer needs this.
That whole import is gone, yeah. Nice.
And then for bullet, same deal, right? And it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The manager. Cool. Game's rendered again, so that's a good start.
Doesn't shoot.
Doesn't shoot.
This game is undefined. Oh, that makes sense. Because when we register,
right? It's setting manager, which doesn't exist. So, yep.
Maybe this thing needs to have a pointer to the game as well.
Yep.
Right.
It totally does.
So the entity manager needs to have.
Listen, it doesn't necessarily need to be.
It doesn't need to be exposed, right? Like we just.
Right. It's just part of the setup for. Yeah, we can always go past the interface, which is nice.
Yeah.
But everywhere we do entity.manager needs to be entity.game.
This means like game.
Mm-hmm.
iGame.
iGame.
Game. And then entity.id. Why is it complaining here? Did we make the iEntity? Did we screw that up? I think we did. This should be a string. Oh, it's a UID, right?
Yeah.
That's weird that it didn't complain before.
Yeah. How long has that been like that?
I don't know. It feels like it was there for a while, right?
Okay. Weird.
Okay, so now it still doesn't shoot.
No, because
we got a lot of complaints.
The game manager needs to. It should all have been strings. What the heck?
Yeah. Sorry, you were saying about the game manager?
Oh, it needs to. The entity manager needs to be constructed with the game.
Oh yeah, of course. And is that in game.ts?
Yep.
New entity manager. This.
Cool.
Oh, sweet. All right, and now that that's the case, I'm going to rename this to. All right, it's happening. I'm capitalizing.
Ooh,
all of the automatically updated ports.
Amazing. And so entity manager is having trouble with iGame right now.
Okay.
Reasonably. I found that you might have to redo your server after this with a rename like that.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of violence that we just. Wait, what was running my server if that wasn't there?
Possibly the other terminal instance. You see the one Z shell in that menu? Make sure there's not two. Okay. Well,
what the hell?
Do yard start, see what you get. Oh yeah, your server's just running somewhere else now. It's great. Love it.
Okay. Kill all parcel.
Oh no.
What the fuck?
do you just have like terminal running in the background still kicking?
Yeah, it's funny. I thought it was. Oh, you're saying Do I have it in the terminal somewhere?
I see iTerm. There you go. Yeah.
Oh, that was weird. I think I just had 2 running to begin with. Dirty.
Okay, great.
No, so I need FTS. So it didn't update my imports. So where is it still?
Ooh. ./entity probably.
Yes.
Nope. No. Ah, entity is not there, that's for sure. And then wall implements iEntity. Wait, let's fix wall. Just
game. Do we know what to delete this? Don't save it.
That could have been a problem too.
And sorry, what were you saying was weird about this one?
This needs to be iEntity and then ID is string in the iEntity import.
And this is a game. That's an iGame. Then let's try recovering from that.
It built something great. Bullets. All right, sure.
Okay, I think we're back to normal after all that. Wow, impressive. And this doesn't need an entity manager anymore.
Nice.
Okay, that's cool.
iGame is still there too. I think you.
I didn't actually delete it.
It didn't get deleted, and I don't know what happened.
Move it to the trash.
Great. Okay, sweet. Well, that was a necessary refactor.
That was great. Okay, so what we have now is the ability to put different types of entities into different buckets and then do collision, right? Were you going to highlight something?
No, I was just trying to think. Sorry, cursor. Let me go back to the highlighter.
There, no problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So
the purpose of what we just did was to make it so that we can actually look up bullets from the player. We can look up walls from the player. Right? Because now that we have a game, we can actually organize things into different buckets if we wanted to. Right?
Exactly. And maybe part of this is that we can ask for, like the game itself can ask for the object at ij and the terrain at ij specifically.
The game can do that for sure.
Yeah, or the player can, especially.
Yes. That's interesting. Okay, so do we want to have a thing? Do we just want to loop over? Like, we could separate entities into different buckets, or we could just iterate over all the entities and just like implement our own kind of like dirty query system.
I think let's start there because we'll be able to do it faster. But yeah, I think definitely the am I intersecting with something, and what's nice is that if we stick to purely tile based, our intersection is am I in ij, what's in ij, instead of trying to like loop through every possible object. Where instead we're going to be like, am I on the tile or not? And
yeah,
that feels like really nice for a player and a bullet and like movable objects.
Yes.
And simple math.
Yeah, totally. So that makes me want to. So is it something? Is what you're proposing like get entities at, and then it's pause vec2, which then returns an I-entity array, something like that.
Yeah, and the pos vec2 really could be I and j coordinates because everything is mapped to that except for the player. So all the work we need to do is figure out what map coordinates is the player intersecting with, and where do we want to define that collision? Like, is hitting the edge? If the player is the player a square bounding box, or a circle at the center that like can sort of walk onto things halfway?
So yeah, this is actually an interesting question,
Mm-hmm.
because I think there are actually going to be different use cases for finding entities at a particular world position,
Mm.
and there's going to be a use case for finding entities at a particular tile position, right?
Yeah.
So maybe we want to make a draw a bright line distinction. What are we doing right now? Is it just wall collision that we're worrying about right now?
Let's just do wall collision.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I call it tile pause?
Yeah, I think
And
so.
then I'm actually going to make this a little bit tedious. I don't want to represent that as a vec2. Vec2 implies like a smooth, continuous positions, over the entire floating point space. It really should be int, but we just don't have those types in JavaScript or TypeScript.
Oh, no, I mean that's why I specifically suggested 2 parameters for this as well. It's just like everything we've already got everything in IJ coordinates. Like let's just ask for it in that too. But pause as a I feel like having a position type for tiles makes sense in the future. So I like number.
Okay, great.
And no curly braces. We can't implement that here.
Oh yes, of course. And then, does it make sense then to have tile pause? Is that going to be useful?
Maybe so. We can always figure it out. We could always ask the playfield sort of what that is. It's interesting. I feel like for the player has some very specific behaviors here where it like will always be on like 4-ish tiles because it's moving around fluidly.
Yes. Yeah, that is interesting.
So we're gonna ask like what's in there, and then maybe like have to decide that like X motion has stopped because over here is a wall.
Yeah. Ugh. So I'm actually wondering how profitable it is for us to think in terms of tile positions.
Maybe not. It's just how I had it in my head. I was thinking of it in terms of our collider. I think for something like a wall is a very simple like rectangle on rectangle thing, versus I think the terrain. If we're going to do movement like half speed in rivers, I wouldn't want to do till half of our tank is in the water.
Yeah.
Okay. That's kind of like the model I had in my head, which are two completely different collisions.
That's okay. We're just gonna have to cheat a little bit and say we assume that all wall entities are going to be like axis aligned, no orientation, plus fully occupying one tile and never being in more than one tile.
Let's start there because I think it applies to walls. And bunkers and trees, and maybe mines, but mines I might want to say actually half on.
Okay.
So yes. At least there's like 2 classes of like collision I can anticipate for this thing.
So maybe not this. Let's just we do have this get entity at tile pause function under the game, right? Mm-hmm. And then the game is actually going to implement this. Mm-hmm. And why didn't I?
We added a pause number.
Whoa, what was that? Did I just open a terminal?
Somehow, yeah. I don't understand what just happened.
Yeah.
I did not know there was a shortcut for that.
Didn't I just copy and paste? What's going on here? I think that terminal messed me up.
I think somehow you pasted it into a terminal.
And then, does it really not know identity? Jeez, come on, man.
It's okay. Everything can import everything now. We're good. The world is safe.
And then this is just going to be a straightforward loop, right? For this dot entities, is it for each? Is there for each loop?
It's this dot entities dot each, and it takes a block.
I don't want to do dot each because I can't return out of it very easily. Does that make sense?
Yeah. We can't return. We have to build an array out of this no matter what for the return value because we can't.
Oh, so what we really want is like a reduce. Although is reduce kind of gross? Like,
Man, I suck at reduce.
that's not entities.
No.
Oh,
God.
Does our entity manager even expose this? It
thought it
might.
did.
Maybe the entity manager has to expose this function, but then it doesn't have a playfield. That's fine, right?
It's okay. I think the game should return values. Oh, it's not going to return an entity.
So what if we put this in the entity manager?
Do we even need this function? Because in the player, it's just this.game.entities ij. Like we have direct access to this through at least a long path.
We don't, because the iEntity manager doesn't have.
Should it?
Should it? Should it?
I think so.
Let me be a bit pedantic and say we write query functions for now, and if that starts to get obnoxious.
Well, the case of, there's another tank on top of a tree that you're running into is maybe going to happen here.
Yeah.
Or there's bullets and walls in the same square, bullets and trees in the same square or something. So, yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
No, you're good.
And that's going to be, yeah. Okay. And then now we do the this dot entities dot. There's not even a reduce function. Fuck. For each this one, right?
No, that's not a. Is that for? I think it's .each. I thought it was .each. It's weird that it gave you that auto suggestion.
I think it's for each. I think .each is the .each is Ruby.
Oh man, I've been looking at too many languages.
And then we're just going to emulate, right? Const result equals this. And then for each, the expression not callable, ID has no call.
It is for each. How do I do this as a job?
I think it's one of those Bernstein Bears things, right? Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, there's this weird black hole of.
You mean the Berenstain Bears?
Berenstain Bears, the stained bears. Yes. Okay, we do have access to position here, right? So what we're going to say is if this is going to be a long thing. The pause, we can then say, let's say the min y equals, and this is a tile position, or is this a tile position, right?
I was thinking so, because basically we have objects that are grid aligned, objects that aren't like the player, and the player has to be like, what are my 4 intersecting tiles, and like let me make sure I can. Like the player has to handle 4 things. Yeah.
Can you back up a second and maybe write not the test case per se, but let's write it's player that we're trying to deal with, right?
Yes.
Is player going to bump into a wall? That's what we're talking about, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. And so we've done all the motion here, and what we want to do now is we want to check collision against stuff, right? So we're going to say walls equals this dot game dot entities dot get entities at tile position, and we're going to boil this entity's position down to a tile position, right? And what's that going to look like? Tile pos equals, and the x is going to be this dot pos 0 modulo tile width, tile size. This dot pos 1 modulo tile size. Is that correct?
Wait. No, divided. It needs to be integer division, right?
Oh, you're right. Not
Yeah.
position. So it's gonna be like math.floor, right?
Yeah. So maybe I'm like I'm feeling. I'm not sure. I'm not sure my brain is working the right way, but I'm thinking of like our player object is like it's intersecting, or like it's always on some sort of like four tile grid, right? Uh, and I wonder how much that orientation matters too, because like when you're in, like when we find an object over here, we know like what to clamp on versus over here we also know what to clamp on. I wonder if the player is moving around with like actually a tinier grid of 4 semi-tiles or something. Like, do I want to know what's in my top left quadrant, essentially? And does that help us?
Yeah, it kind of does. It's like, oh, I just like looked up and I noticed a giant crack in my wall above the door. And I'm just trying to decide, have I seen that crack before? Has it been there for the last 3 or 4 years? Or is that a new thing?
Is this a metaphor for our collision system?
I think it's a metaphor for America, Dom.
3 years and 6 months, that crack's really been hanging out there. But actually, 50 years as well.
Yeah, basically the evening of the last presidential election, that crack appeared, and I just like didn't notice it. That's when I slammed the door in frustration.
So actually, I think I just convinced myself that I want an entity manager that returns me a matrix of tiles, and this is actually screen position, and it hands us back a 2x2 array of like, here's what you're on top of. Is that crazy?
So maybe let's take entities out of the picture.
Yeah.
What we're trying to say is like, am I colliding with something that is like aligned perfectly with the tile grid, right? And the way that we would actually do this is we need to find the bounding box of the player, and then check every we just want to see if the bounding box overlaps with a tile that has a particular type or flag on it, and then resolve collision that way.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that makes more sense. And it'll be, I think that's a better model, because when we do bullets, which have a tinier bounding box, it's the same check, where we say, like, we've got this rectangle, what is it touching, and then we can act on that.
If you look at the, I think we learned about this doing breakout, where clip cut is just gnarly. If you like, I think I remember using like a Flash framework once to make a game, and if you look at the collision code in any engine, it's just awful. Like it's just really terrible. So it's going to be like the painful part of, I think, this stage of the game, which is fine.
Yeah, we got to do it. We got to do it eventually.
One remark I will make is we are at 5 p.m. How the time flies.
Yeah, should we maybe like take the next day or two to just sort of load this into our heads research-wise, and then come back?
Yeah.
Ready to intersect some rectangles?
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
What I would like to think on especially is we're going to have to deal with terrain-oriented collision, and we're going to have to also deal with entity-oriented collision. Like, does an entity overlap with one? And the main distinctions between those is like, one type of collision will cause you to move a character out of another character's bounding box. So like the terrain collision theoretically is like, we never want a player to overlap with impassable terrain, right? It should never be like half into. If a river is impassable, it should never be half into a river. If a mountain is impassable, it should never be half into a mountain. With walls, it's interesting, right? Because walls are sort of halfway in between this world. It's sort of like axis aligned plus tile grid aligned, but we also want to be able to destroy it and make it malleable.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder how much the fact that something is tile aligned should matter to us.
Yeah, I feel like I might have been barking up the wrong tree there.
I'm not actually sure myself, but like at a certain point, we're going to have to do like rectangle overlapping rectangle collision, right? I actually think maybe probably the question we're going to get into is like, I think what happened with Breakout and the bricks as well, where what happens if you're colliding, let's say you have a type of entity that you can't overlap with, which is like a wall, right? A wall is an entity that you never should overlap with. And so the way that we resolve that is if you are overlapping it, we're just going to scoot you away from the wall a little bit.
Right.
Now, once you're scooted away from the wall, but what happens if there's two walls next to each other? Like, do we resolve collision against the first wall that we just find, like where it just kind of turns up, and then scoot you a particular direction?
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting about this all is that like the scooting will potentially work different ways depending on like if you're bumping up against if you're overlapping against two walls, it might get a little bit weird. Is
it like you scoot? Is it maybe if you hit a collision, you scoot and then you like say like, hey, let me like redo my collision, like start from scratch, because you're no longer colliding with one thing, but like, are you also overlapping like on the top and you scoot down?
Yeah.
Can we make it so that basically like if you're bumping two walls, like one of them takes care of the work for you, and then you make sure you don't have another one to register, and then just call it a day?
We can absolutely do that. I think where it gets a little bit tricky, especially with this overhead view, is you don't know whether the y-axis takes precedence or the x-axis takes precedence. Because you can imagine that you're not over. Let's say you have two walls on top of each other, and your tank is down here, and it moves diagonally towards that.
Oh.
And it's moving the same y velocity as the x velocity.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've moved up one y unit and over one x unit, and now you're colliding on both.
Mm-hmm.
We might have to do a thing where we do edge deletion, like what we did with Breakout.
Yeah. I was just thinking.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was thinking that like a wall, like the walls have to sort of like eventually maybe know about their neighbors to do the correct kind of drawing, but like each wall segment, like this wall segment might know that it is in fact only x, and this one is xy, because it's a corner. So like a wall that's in the middle of a chunk would maybe be able to say like, I can only push back on the x-axis.
Yeah,
because it knows how it's rendering and what its neighbors are. So
yeah, and I think that could make some degree of sense. The other way I've seen it happen is that like the collision world doesn't see distinct wall entities; it sees one giant merged rectangle. Right, like somehow like, and that seems like it's complicated in its own way, right? Because like it's composed of a bunch of different like individual walls, but somehow it knows during the sort of creation and resolution of the physics simulation that it's all should be considered like one giant like rectangle, and that's a case where if it was a one giant rectangle, then you wouldn't have this contradiction between do I intersect on the y-axis versus the x-axis, because like you just know that like the only sort of like edge that I've broken is a horizontal edge, and so I'll just resolve on the x-axis, right? But that's complicated though, right? Because now you have to merge geometries, which is tricky.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, let's come prepared for that. I think we can do that.
Great. So I've done a lot of damage. What if I just delete this, or at least commented it out? Can I get the thing to render again? Okay, we are in a renderable state, and then
what is Entity Manager angry about, real quick?
It's because I start.
Yeah, just comment that sucker too.
And then I think common.ts also has this, and if I just comment that out, we have no longer any warnings.
I love it. Yep, that looks great.
Cool. So pretty good. We've got the ability to edit maps. We did a fair amount of refactoring, and now entities are aware of the whole world. You know that they know the game.
Yep, and we've got our nice 2-layer map, where we've got a terrain and then entities layered on top of it, which I think is going to be really powerful.
Another way I could have named this class is world.
Yeah.
World, I think, implies it's the game simulation plus some rendering. I think the game is fine for now. I don't want to because what these really are just Russian dolls. Like you'd have a game, which maybe also has things like the UI in it, like the HUD or the overlay, and it could have things like audio, like the sound manager for audio stuff.
And I'm okay the way that main TS is kind of thinning out into basically just saying start the game. That feels nice.
Yeah, but you can imagine the game. The game has playfield and entities in it, but you can imagine that there's an intervening layer called worlds, where you could have multiple worlds as well. Certainly, I've done that. If you have a pause menu or something like that, you still need the game. You don't want to throw that out of memory. But if you're paused, you want to run a simulation on a different thing with a collection of entities and backgrounds and things like that that are maybe independent of whatever, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Cool.
Rad. Boy, it is Sunday night. How did the weekend just
I know. Time moves strengely in these Corona times.
It definitely does. All right.
Don't forget to call your mom today.
I actually had brunch with my mom. It was great.
Oh, brunch.
Yeah.
Amazing.
She lives in El Cerrito with my sister, so it's pretty cool.
That's fair. I'm so glad. That's really cool.
Yeah,
we spent an hour and a half on Zoom this morning with my grandma because that was the only option.
Yeah. So remind me again. Your grandma is in Louisiana.
No, Connecticut, and my parents are in Louisiana.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the family's just super far apart, and no one can go to anyone right now.
Oh, that's rough.
It's annoying. Yeah.
All right. Well, happy Mother's Day to everybody out there, and
All right,
your loved ones, unless they traumatize you as a child, and then in which case, just enjoy your weekend.
In which case, good job raising yourself. Keep on doing that.
Yep. Keep on keeping on.
Cool, dude. I'm gonna turn off the stream. Good night, everybody.
Yeah, just cut it.
Welcome back to my amazing audio graph. Oof, good.